I think that the birth rates and marriage rates will continue to plummet, and I believe that the male loneliness epidemic will continue to grow. And it's because of the next two articles that I'm about to talk about. So, this is an article from NBC. It says young men and women are taking the gender gap to staggering new levels. The gulf between Gen Z men and women on political and cultural issues is far wider than it is in older generations. And the next article is about Gen Z men flocking to church. Politics and church attendance is going to keep young men and young women apart, and that is going to keep the marriage rates low and the birth rates low as well. That's what I predict. So let's get into both of these articles real quick. Okay, so it says the split between men and women is one of the starkest divisions in American politics right now. And that divide is deepest in Gen Z, which is taking the traditional gender gap in American politics and stretching it even further. The new data from NBC Stay Tuned poll, powered by SurveyMonkey, shows that debates over Donald Trump and Leon Scum, immigration, and the state of the country drive most of the division between Gen Z men and women. But it's not just pure politics propelling the pronounced gender gap. Big divides exist on policy issues like abortion and broader value questions, too. In large part, the driver is Gen Z women, who are more likely to identify as Democrats and take the liberal position in questions across the poll when compared to other generations or the U.S. population as a whole. And the effects of that dramatic split could define American politics for decades if it continues. Take Trump's approval rating. Among adults, 45% say they approve Trump's job performance and 55% disapprove. Adults between the ages of 18 and 29 grade the president worse than that. 34% approve, 66 disapprove. But the difference between young men and women is significant. While 45% of young men approve of Trump's job performance, only 24% of young women do, a 21-point difference. So this graph right here is the gender gap on Trump's job approval. So for the young people, 18 to 29-year-old, 24% of women approve, 45% of men. That gap is the biggest of all of the generation's gaps. 30 to 44, 40% of women approve, 49% of men. On all of these, the men approve of Trump's job performance more than the women, as you can see in yellow. There's a similar extra wide gap between Gen Z men and women on their views on Trump's handling of immigration, as well as their views on White House buddy Leon Musty. Musty is viewed favorably by 41% of all adults and unfavorably by 59%. But while Gen Z men are about in line with the national population, with 43% viewing him favorably, just 20% of Gen Z view Musty favorably. The negative views of Trump and Musty underscore how Democratic leaning younger women are compared to younger men. What's more, young women are more likely to align with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. A slight majority of Gen Z women, 52%, say they consider themselves to be Democrats, the largest concentration of any age gender group within one political party. Among Gen Z men, 1/3 say they are Democrats. And we have all heard that liberal women do not want conservative men. So that's the reason why I say that the birth rate will continue to plummet, as well as the marriage rates will continue to plummet. Because if these liberal women do not want to touch or even breathe the same air as these Gen Z men, that's only going to keep the sexes more separate. So this is the last graph that I'll do from this before I go to the next article. Gen Z women more likely to consider themselves Democrats. The men, 35%, all the way over here. The divide is huge. 53% of women consider themselves Democrat. Look at that divide. Whereas if you look at age group 30 to 44, the men are 33, the women are 36. If you look at the 45 to 64-year-olds, and these are the people that probably have already been there, done that, as far as babies, if they're going to have them, marriage, if they're going to do it, 30% of men, 37% of women. So look at this. That just goes to show you that these young people are the ones that are the more they're the more apt to be having babies and getting married and pairing up right now. But if they're this far apart, will they even come together? Now I want to come to this article about Gen Z men flocking to church. how grievance culture, gender anxiety, and Theo bros are shaping young male faith. Gen Z is the first modern generation of Americans in which men appear to be more religious than women, but don't celebrate yet. The reasons for the religious gender gap reversal point toward a worrying future for American Christianity and society in general, unless middle aged men head it off now. 40 something men like me grew up during a cultural moment in which Christians, politicians, and journalists fretted about the question, what does it mean to be a man? We worried along with them in our late teens and early 20s. Then we had to figure it out more or less on our own, since no one gave an answer beyond strong and tough. It almost seemed like keeping the existential question alive was the point. Evidently, today's male centric influencers don't just keep the question of manhood alive to make money, they also offer more concrete answers. According to an analysis from sociologists Paul Juppe and Brooklyn Walker, Gen Z men are more likely than Gen Z women to support Christian nationalism, espouse apocalypticism, be familiar with ideas such as repealing women's right to vote, and view themselves as victims of modern culture. And if young men view themselves as victims, Juppe and Walker found, then they are also more likely to identify as evangelical. The evangelical tradition, of course, centers a male dominant gender hierarchy in its theology, churches, and families. In short, Gen Z men are coming to churches in small groups that nurse their anxieties about being male in the 21st century and promise them top spot in the social hierarchy. I grew up wondering how to be a man, due in no small part to the cultural hand wringing around the question and the lack of a clear answer. Now that I'm 40, I can offer a clear and different answer to Gen Z men than what they're hearing. An answer that affirms and empowers men without relying on grievance, hierarchy, and misogyny to do so. The grievance rhetoric aimed at Gen Z men. Many Gen Z men seem to be drawn to churches that nurture their sense of grievance, their disenchantment with society, and their victimhood. Then these churches tell them how great they really are and promise a return to rigid traditional gender hierarchies that benefit them, that put them on top and women at the bottom. And women of right now are not going to accept being put down under simply because they were born with a uterus. If that sounds alarmist, consider Juppe's and Walker's data. Gen Z men are more likely than Gen Z women to express Christian nationalist views and espouse apocalyptic ideas. These gender gaps disappear among older groups, as shown in the graph below. The yellow dotted line represents men. The solid black line shows women. Men between the ages of 20 and 40 emerge in this data as distinctly religious compared to both their female peers and people aged 45 plus. Let's just concentrate on this one real quick. So this is worship attendance and religious involvement. And so this is the younger aspect right here. So this hump right here is the big old gap between men and women. So men are up here, women are down here. And that's worship attendance. And this one is religious involvement. You see the men aged 20 to 40 is much higher than women as far as religious involvement. Women are walking away from the church, and typically women are the ones that are propping up the church and propping up patriarchy with their unpaid labor. So if women walk away, this will continue to fall. This is going to be very interesting to watch this unfold. Okay, also, we can look at Christian nationalism as well. Still here, between the ages of 20 and 40, men are definitely higher than women. You can see that in that graph as well. Clearly, young Christian men receive more exposure to both traditional and misogynistic ideas about gender roles than other groups. Why? The Theo Bros, the evangelical leaders very active online, promote traditional gender norms and expectations on TikTok, YouTube, social media, podcasts, and so on. Some advocate radical ideas like repealing the 19th Amendment. Worse still, such rhetoric may be an entry point into the manosphere, which is a sprawling online universe of misogynistic content. A lot of it overlaps. The Theo Bros, the manosphere, the red pillars, all of that overlaps because they put men on a higher hierarchy than they put women, which is down below. Many pastors and politicians describe masculinity as under attack from a feminized culture. In their rhetoric, men are victims for simply being the competitive, aggressive, tough guys God made them to be. Their solution? A return to past gender roles and expectations, facilitated, if necessary, by governmental policy. Such rhetoric tells men three things. You are victims of a feminized culture. Number two, whatever your struggles might be, it's not your fault. Number three, a rigid gender hierarchy will solve your problems. Number four, our church or political party just happens to have a rigid gender hierarchy. Why grievance rhetoric draws young men to churches. Like all good lies, there is some kernel of truth to the idea of male victimhood. Men face unique challenges in our modern economy. There are more opportunities for knowledge work, and it usually yields far greater rewards than physical labor. Naturally, society pivoted toward valuing the characteristics and skills necessary for success in the knowledge economy. Advanced education or training, collaboration, cooperation, communication, creativity, and analysis and innovation. Very seldom today can a young man graduate high school, get a factory job, work 40 years for generous pay, and retire with a full pension. Those who get factory jobs must worry about automation and offshoring. Yes, society needs welders, plumbers, carpenters, and more, but most trades now require some technical training, may demand frequent travel, and likely lack benefits. You're on your own, kid. College remains an excellent investment, but the skills of education, sitting still, following instructions, listening to lectures, reading books, writing papers, doing math, organizing tasks, managing deadlines can feel alienating and out of reach for many young men. Plus, it costs a small fortune. No wonder some Gen Z men feel disenchanted. But instead of urging young men to meet the challenge, everyone from Wild at Heart author John Eldridge to Theobro adjacent Wayne Grudem told men that they should just be as masculine as possible because God wants tough, strong men to be in charge. The inevitable failure to turn back social progress and the predictor counter arguments about toxic masculinity sometimes look like attack on masculinity in general. Playing on young men's perceived victimhood attracts a large following on social media and in the pews. Jupe and Walker explored the connection between one's sense of victimhood and one's religiosity. We asked our respondents a series of questions about their sense of victimhood following Armely and Ender. For example, items in the scale ask, the system works against people like me, and I rarely get what I deserve in life. What did Jupe and Walker find? The relationship between perceived victimhood and evangelical identification was strongest among 19-year-old men, and you can look at this graph below. If these men really want to turn back the clock, if they want to lean into church as women are leaving the church, they're simply going to push women further and further away. If they keep wanting to be a victim instead of attempting to succeed and do the same things that women are doing for the successes that we're getting, they're still simply going to push women away. Nothing about this movement or these movements in general will keep the genders together. It's just going to get wider and wider on their divergence. The politics and the religiosity of these two groups is going to continue to make the birth rate plummet, especially since Gen Z's current ages are 13 to 28. So this is prime age when women and men are getting together for dating and marriage and having kids. Typically around late 20s or early 30s, that's when women and men are pairing up. So if this group of people are not even liking each other because of political differences and religion differences, that means that these divergence, these gender gaps are going to do nothing except get worse. Okay, y'all, chime in. Let me know what you think about all of this. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. And go ahead and give me a follow if you're not yet following me.